It's the Craig Rugby Podcast. We're in TG Carr Studios out in Ballynahown because we've been commentating on the Dragons match where Connacht have managed to get a bonus point win that they badly needed and has them up to 6th place with 3 matches to go. Just looking at the TV here, and Joe Joyce has been interviewed because he got man of the match. Rob, that was pretty tough going out there.
It was absolute tough ploughing, isn't that our phrase? From start to finish, I don't know what else to make of it other than it's 5 points and we're not gone yet, and if Hansen's coming back, and if the group of players can get over some of the injuries, if Prendergast's injury turns out to be nothing more than just a niggle, but I'd be worried about that because it looked like a thumb injury. If Jack Carty can get back, because I'd be very worried about JJ Hanrahan's injury. There's no question that's a potential season-ending injury. I think that's the phrase we can use anyways, and we just hope that maybe it's just not as bad as it looks. There are some of the problems. The refereeing was very poor, played a huge part in Connacht's struggles. That's fine. I'll acknowledge that. Normally I wouldn't be happy to do that, but Connacht played a huge part in their own struggles as well. So it's indicative of a season where Connacht seem to be lacking something in these moments, something a little bit different. In the old days, in the best of days, Connacht had wins where they didn't play that well. In our championship winning season, we had days like this. So I'm not saying that, but this is happening too many times. Main point is they got out of jail. Main point is, I look at the league standings now, they're up to 6th place with 44 points. A few weeks ago we said that's going to give them the best chance. The Lions game looms large in terms of the blow that was to what they wanted to do, but they've still got a chance. It's still in their own hands. They go to Munster with something to play for. If they had lost here, I mean, I know technically they'd be still in contention for playoffs, but I think you'd be a fool to say they were still in this at that point. Yeah,
exactly. And what we saw tonight, William, was they were playing against a team who made a huge fight of it, and that's always what you get when you get to play down in Munster.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about Munster just at the minute. You got to look at this game first. We'll see. I'm tempted to say sometimes Connacht play better against better teams. It's this type of team that give them a lot of questions. They start struggling. And the real issue was they weren't consistent throughout the 80 minutes. And that, if you want to take consistency, meaning that they just weren't at their best. Whereas last week, I thought they pretty much were at their best, but that was a home game. Fair play to the Dragons. They came and played. They were completely illegal at the breakdown. It was pathetic refereeing. And I normally don't get involved in that. But, you know, Connacht maybe needed to react a bit quicker to that. But they will take, all they can do from this is take the 5 points. They've done what they said they needed to do. They've got 10 points out of 10 from these 2 games. They've beaten the worst 2 teams in the competition, relevant to where they are in the table. And now it gets a lot tougher. Munster, yep, tough game. Leinster away at the end of May. That's a long way off. The home game to the Stormers. Plenty of other rugby matches to be played. We're still getting some slightly strange results. Leinster have now lost 2 games in a row and been beaten up in South Africa. Munster have gone down there.
Stop. The Lions were supposed to be a team that were coming, and then they get hammered by Munster at home.
Yeah, but it's to go down and win 2 matches at altitude, especially winning last week in Loftus, where they believe nobody can beat them. So there's a lot going on in this competition.
But William, you always talk about this. Sorry, Alan, just to jump in. Connacht have 9 wins and 6 defeats. Do we need to check ourselves and just accept where they are?
Yeah, at this stage you have to accept it, but they should be better, and they know that themselves. And the argument is you must pick up your points when they're there for you at various times in the season. You have to, and to lose 7 points in total on last plays of games that you were leading in, irrespective of how you played. They weren't leading against Edinburgh. It was heading to a draw. It didn't happen. The one I think that could still come back to really bite them is the game a couple of weeks ago in Treviso. Not last Sunday, or a couple of Sundays ago. The league game there, when they got it wrong right at the end. They were a little better this evening. Their inability to deal with kickoffs is becoming, frankly, embarrassing.
It's bizarre. I don't know what you thought, Alan. We were on the commentary, but I'd love to know your take on it, because it's just like they don't seem to be addressing it.
No, they really are struggling. But you have to give credit to the opposition. They changed every kickoff. They didn't kick to the same place each time. So that's one thing.
But it's every
just
game.
to come back to the Dragons though. We talk about their crap when they've only been there. They've won.
No one's saying that now.
No, William does. William
Fair
tells
enough.
us how rubbish they are.
Fair
They've won 3 of the last 4 home games. They've only been two games they lost by less than 7 points. 3 now tonight.
They've conceded 509 points
away
in 15
from
games.
home.
I know, but Alan, everything I saw from them.
The only teams that have hammered them at home were Leinster and the Bulls.
Everything I saw from them tonight was a disjointed mess. But there's some talent there, and there's some hope.
Absolutely.
And there's some fire.
And they fought.
And I
fought.
like their fight. It reminds me of Connacht 15, 20 years ago.
But that was just a counter, you know.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm not backing the fact that Connacht had that game won and should have been comfortable.
And we've seen again with the extra man, like during the sin bin, like conceding 10 points to 7.
Struggling.
I mean, and just that little kick to the corner and players just going to sleep. I just don't know why it's happening. I don't think it's attitude. I think it's functional at times. I think it's structural. I think those restarts are bizarre. But like, I mean, there is a definite, like, you know, none of us are top end rugby coaches, but there's a definite call to give Bundyaki all the restarts. I don't see other teams doing that, and I don't think it works all the time.
Well, actually, when he's not doing it and he's not on the field, Carl Ford does it. So there's some reason why.
And
they
that's
do
gone
it.
wrong as well, as we know in big games.
Absolutely.
You know, we got away with it against Glasgow way back. But look, we digress. It's a strange game. I mean, if someone hasn't watched the game, like Connacht have been in total control at 19-7, and a dreadful refereeing call gave Dragons a bit of a lifeline. I think
that
if
was
that
massive.
penalty in the scrum, which was a joke, if that isn't given, I don't think we're having this discussion. I think Connacht win more comfortably. But then in the second half,
if that had been given correctly, it would have been a penalty to Connacht.
Yes.
Inside their 22.
And then you have a bonus point before half time. But I could still see this Connacht team,
absolutely,
this incarnation of Connacht team, conceding 2 or 3 tries in the second half and causing a bit of a headache for themselves.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the top 2 inches are still a bit of a problem. And we gave away too many line breaks. We are the 3rd best team for not giving line breaks away in the competition, but we gave way too many away tonight. And that's an element of switching off, and that's an element of, you know, if you do that against Munster, you're going to get absolutely murdered because they're playing great rugby. It's not just that they're going down to South Africa and winning. They're winning playing great rugby.
Yeah, we're going to struggle in that
one. We're going to struggle
But
really
like points
there.
difference is important right now, and performance is important. A bonus point, if they could dig it out of there to start with, would be amazing.
Absolutely.
At 44 points right now, other teams going to jump ahead of them. Benetton have an awful fixture run, so that's going to be tough for them. Connacht's just looking to scrape in at 8, I think, when you're away to Munster and Leinster in the last 3. The Stormers game is by no means winnable just because it's at home. No means a kind of Connacht favourites or whatever. But, you know, at home they can do it. Maybe they are favourites, but it's not easy. The favourites at home, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. The Stormers don't tend to travel particularly well. And you've got to go out and boss that game. Munster will be an interesting challenge. But I would go down there with a really hard attitude and let's see what happens. And go for it. I think it was interesting tonight. As I say, I think sometimes Connacht struggle against these sides. They should be better than this. I think the Dragons are a very, very poor side.
I agree.
Where
Alan's coming from, but I think and
the thing was their head coach. Listen to the interview he did with BBC before their line collapsed. He kept saying, we give away too many stupid penalties, we make bad decisions, we don't play for 80 minutes. He's bang on. And Connacht have got it over the line. They've got the 5 points. They won't take any great pleasure out of the performance. I'm sure the review will be quite heavy. I think it's handy that they've got it's not a break. They're just going to keep training, but they don't have a game next weekend. And I think it'll be an opportunity for them to reassess. They have got a couple of potentially really serious injuries. JJ Hanrahan didn't look good. I don't know what Dennis Buckley went off with. The other one that's worrying is Cian Prendergast. We'll see. There's plenty of people putting their hands up for second. Gavin Thornbury did a great 55 minutes. He was never going to play much more than that.
I'll say this. Look, I do love the fact that now we're going to Munster still in this competition. At the end of the day, we want to get to the playoffs, and we know we're going to be away from home. So think of this as a playoff game. And the best thing is, think of this as an American-style playoff game, whereas if you lose it, you're still not gone. We're absolutely not gone if we lose to Munster in any way, because Leinster on the last day is a place we've won before. I know it sounds outrageous, folks, and if you're asking me would we beat them in a quarter-final playoff, I don't think so. And if it was a Champions Cup game, I know we wouldn't beat them, but we can win that one in theory. We can definitely beat the Stormers, and I think I'm just, as a Connacht, as a person who follows Connacht, as a Connacht supporter, of course, as well, we all are. We shouldn't hide from that when we're doing what we do, which is try and bring you a journalistic coverage as well. I'm just relieved they've won this game, and I think a lot of Connacht fans will just be happy that Connacht are still on track and sitting in the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm still worried about the Stormers. I'm not as worried about Munster, because I think we're under no pressure. Munster are now on a winning streak and will expect to win that game, and there won't be any pressure, and no one will be talking about us. Actually, listening to the South African commentary today, they were talking about who's going to make it into the playoffs, and they didn't mention Connacht.
But that's understandable now. Now they may have not mentioned us last year, but it's understandable because we're not doing enough in the big game.
I agree.
And they will have watched the Lions destroy us, and that didn't happen last year. So like I'm not saying the glass is half full overall, but I think I am saying that. I think Connacht, sometimes we just need to grasp when moments go our way, and this has just fallen our way. This was a 50-50 game in the second half, whether we like it or not. And I think that's why we're a bit shook after the result, because how was that a 50-50 game? But it was. And a high tackle from a Dragons player, Ben Carter, and a stupid play from Jordan Williams has cost our team dearly. And if both those players had kept their composure in those moments, perhaps Connacht lose the game.
They definitely had Connacht under pressure, because Connacht did go to sleep, and there was a couple of times where players sort of looked at each other going, that's your job, not my job, that's your job. And there's that Rio Dyer try was a classic case of it. People turned around and said, oh, hang on, we don't have anybody covering there. There are times, and again, that comes back to the top 2 inches. We can have all the technical coaches in the world, but if we don't have a belief in what we're doing, and of course the other issue, is that teams don't fear us in the same way they fear Munster and the same way they fear Leinster.
I love that
they don't fear us, and so that's a top 2 inches job as well.
Yeah, William, I did like that from Blade there, where he just covered that play near the end. Like, that was him showing a bit of experience, because he might be under a bit of pressure right now with all the talk about.
Yeah, well, that was him having been watching the game on the bench, and he saw what was going to come, and he got across and covered it. And it's small things like that. As I say, you could dissect that game from now till doomsday, but they won't, because they've just got the 5 points and you move on. There is some things to look at. Some things worked very well. Scrum was a bit up and down, but again, some of that possibly was due to the refereeing of the scrum. The line out was pretty good. I was delighted to see Dylan Tierney-Martin come on and hit his first 4. Then he wobbled a bit, and there was one bizarre call for a much too complicated line out at a very crucial part of the game.
Yeah.
Decision making like that, that's whoever called that got it wrong.
Yeah, Jared had a quite good impact in the game. In
he got that wrong.
But the front row, Peter Dooley from the very early stage, that's good for Connacht. Elo again, he's just getting more and more game time.
Yeah, he just needs to be a little careful. He just gets a bit overexcited, and at some stage he might do something, and the next thing he knows, he's wandering off for 10 minutes. But look, the job is done. They got 10 points out of 10. That was the minimum from these 2 games. They've done that. We know how difficult the run-in is. You can examine it up and down and up with who's playing who. Benetton have to go to South Africa for 2 games. They've also got a semi-final next week, and I hope they win that. I'd love to see an Italian side. I'd love to see a URC side in the Challenge Cup final. I hope Leinster beat Northampton. I think they will, but I think playing Toulouse more than likely, because I think Toulouse will beat Harlequins, but you never know. That's going to occupy their mind. Munster are like us. They only have one thing to focus on. The Stormers today played like a side that have been told you cannot lose for the second week in a row. So it's a great bubbling tournament. There's still in or around 11 teams chasing 8 places. And if you were the URC organisers, you would be ecstatic with that when you compare the other tournaments,
and the top 4 battle, like Munster, Glasgow, Leinster, getting a home final. Like Munster had to go to South Africa last year.
Yes,
they know the best way to defend their title. Like we've kicked around when we were talking earlier, Porky Grieve. Like, I mean, that's their golden target. So they will be motivated.
First 2 of a home semi, home quarter, and a home semi,
and the top side gets home final.
Home team gets a home final. So there's a lot of
And that's why the league actually matters, which is why it's actually quite a good competition, because unlike certain other sports, and you see in America, the home advantage isn't always as huge as it is in rugby.
It's massive.
Now, I know Munster upended that last year, but that's what makes that such a fantastic triumph for them,
and that is why this competition is working at this stage.
Yes,
I'd
agreed.
say there's a lot of eyes on this.
With what we have, William, can we just put this to bed? There's no sense in your mind that we belong in the Challenge Cup or anything, because, like, technically we've said this, we were outclassed a little bit in the Champions Cup this year. But would you want to just outline to listeners financially, I'd say, first of all, and in just terms of the status of the team, how important it is?
I think the thing about it is, if you want to attract players, now we're producing a lot of our own players at the moment. We're not actually going out hunting for players. We're actually producing them through the system, which is brilliant. Your Devines and your Fords and your Murrays, they're coming through our own system. But it does have more kudos. Now, next season's very complicated. It's a ground with a maximum capacity of 4,000 people on one side of the ground. Champions Cup, if you draw a La Rochelle, if you draw a Toulouse, I don't know how you quite deal with that. And I think it is important to be in it. And I don't think they'll be as badly outclassed this time. I think the lesson has to be learned of that. And I think the defeat to Leinster, followed by the game against Bordeaux. Bordeaux were brilliant that night. But I think Connacht were still playing the game from the week before. And that set the tone for the competition. And yeah, they want to be in the Champions Cup. If they're not in the Challenge Cup, then they need to be saying to themselves, right, we need to be looking hard at this as well.
I think they bring the Champions Cup to Castlebar. There's a nice big stadium there, and it would be huge. It would bring the sport out into the rest of the province. I think it'd be brilliant.
Do you know what I was thinking? And you're going to fall off your chair when you're saying this, but I was in Hyde Park, Roscommon the last day. They put a huge development in there, lads. You have to see it. It's incredible. Like, why not go to Roscommon?
Absolutely.
Like, I mean, why not? They might be rivals of ours in J, but they're all with us in rugby, and they're producing some bloody good ones out there on the field for us week in, week out in the Murrays, and plenty of others. Jack Cardy too. But no, there's loads of reasons why we could think outside the box, and I bet you they would love to have them there. And I say,
oh yeah, I think it'd be huge.
Because we played in a venue, Bordeaux played big Champions Cup games in that old Coliseum-like stadium sometimes.
Yeah.
Hyde Park would wipe the floor with that, so it can be done.
Well, so if it's good enough for Munster and Leinster, I don't see why it's not good enough for us.
Yeah.
I think it's something we should be definitely looking at, but we have to get there first.
Yeah, so that's why it matters, because some people might be sitting at home going, we're not good enough, but that's not really the point, because we're not good enough either. If you know what I mean.
The only way to get good enough is to keep playing it and try and figure out why we're not good enough, so we can play more and play it.
Yes,
play
William
it more.
pointed that
we
out.
still have that
progress,
problem that our average number of wins in the Champions Cup is one per season. When you take
technically
Zebra,
we're on par.
Zebra,
yeah. But it's just there's like, and I'll ask.
But I will say
Pete
that this season is the best season in the URC that we've had, whilst also in the Champions Cup.
That's an interesting stat. And 8 bonus points. You love your bonus points. It's a decent return. And the 37 plus points difference.
Okay,
we're ready to do our interviews.
About to start.
Well, I better get on that. That's it, lads.
Okay, yeah, we've just been interrupted there, so we're going to finish the podcast here with Rob's interview of Pete after that excellent 5-point win. Excellent in the win, not necessarily the performance. But here's what Pete Wilkins had to say.
Pete, it's a huge 5 points in the playoff race, first and foremost. So before we get into the complexities of a complicated game, you must at least take that as the main objective.
Yeah, I'm delighted to get a bonus point win. I mean, obviously targeting the win, but to have a bonus point on top of it, it's huge in the context of the season. As you've alluded to, it's huge in the context of, again, some of the other results that came through in the URC before we played. So, no, it's massive for us. And we know how hard it is to get a win here, full stop, from previous visits. So I'm very, very pleased with that.
So when we watch these games, we're watching them through the prism of a season where there's been ups and downs for Connacht. That was a complicated one as well. Connacht get a 10-point lead, have a sin bin extra man, and yet they get themselves, like the Dragons win, I think score 13 of the next 16 points and get themselves right back into the game. And but for a couple of ill-disciplined moments from them, this could have gone either way.
Yeah, look, I think I was actually talking to Di Flanagan, the head coach. I said, I think if we played another 20 minutes, the lead probably would have kept exchanging hands. It was that type of evening, as you said. Look, I think it was more topsy-turvy than we would have liked. I think in credit to the Dragons, they didn't go away. This season they've struggled a little bit in the fourth quarter of games in terms of opposition teams starting to pile on the tries, and that didn't happen today. And I think a large part of that was the emotion they brought to the occasion and the physicality. Certainly, I think from our point of view, I was disappointed with the amount of tackles we missed, particularly in the first half. But overall, I think they were pressure releases that gave the Dragons opportunities just to get an extra 5 meters or get that front foot ball that enabled them to play on top of us. And I thought we could have controlled that a little bit better. But at the same time, I thought we carried the ball incredibly well. I thought our scrum was excellent, and obviously our driving maul was as good as I've seen it for some time. So I think to have those footholds in the game, it meant we were still in control, albeit having those pressure moments against us.
A lot of the turning points seem to emanate from the restarts. Can you talk to me about how you feel the restarts are going for you?
Yeah, look, I think some of them we were tidy under, and some of them we weren't. And again, there's individuals there who want to do better. Structurally, we can put a framework around guys, and we've got to keep them practicing hard on it. So that'll be part of it in terms of the pressure releases. But we've said it before in the season. Frustratingly, we can't be scoring points and then turning over possession 30, 40 meters out from our own line.
You speak of framework. Would you look at that as well after a game like that and look at different ways of receiving the restarts, or do you think it's mainly individual?
We always look at those frameworks, I suppose, to see do we need to evolve anything, but also looking at the opposition we're playing in terms of where we expect them to kick to and what the threats will be. We've got a default setup there that served us well in theory, but as I said, it's like any part of receiving the ball or any part of defence. One error, whether it's an execution error or a decision-making error, it brings pressure on yourself. And as we said, you certainly can't be doing that, deep in your own half.
A really tough night in terms of injuries. Dennis Buckley seemed to be a HIA. Obviously, Prendergast has got a hand injury from what we can see, and JJ Hanrahan had a very serious one. What can you tell us about what you know so far?
Yeah, so look, Dennis had a blow to the AC joint on his shoulder, and it's nothing structural, which is really reassuring. But those ones can be painful enough that you're just not able to function with it. So he battled on, but I think lifting Gav Thornbury at the next restart just proved a step too far. So yeah, he just couldn't function with it. So we had to get him off the field. But we'll see how that pulls up over the next 48 hours, because they can often go either way. Cian Prendergast had a dislocated thumb. It was put back into place on the field, but again, he just had no strength in it in terms of lifting in the line-outs in particular. So we had to remove him from play. So to lose those two guys early was frustrating. JJ looks like the most serious one. It was his right knee. There was a collision with a Dragons player off the ball there, just behind the breakdown, which knocked him over, and he was obviously in a lot of pain from that. So I haven't got a guide yet as to what type of injury it is, but it's certainly his right knee, and as you would have seen, he was carted off with a fair bit of concern for him. So we'll get an update on that probably in the next hour or so as an initial prognosis, and then obviously keep everything crossed for him, because he's been immense for us.
Connacht have won 5 of their last 7 in this competition, but it doesn't feel like that. Do you understand that kind of feeling, or does that even bother you? Or are you just taking the wins and that's the end of it?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I suppose obviously having those European games and you have a loss in Europe, that tends to punctuate these things. And then a few buys and things obviously breaks up the season as well. I think for us it's it's about our progression, and I've talked a lot to the lads this week about the importance of us staying in control of our own destiny, and in the context of our season, to be going to these last 3 games where we're up to 6th now, and it wasn't long ago we were sitting there in 10th. So that's the important bit for me, is we're moving in the right direction in terms of the table. It will keep changing, no doubt, over these coming weeks with some of the results coming through even today. But as long as we're winning, then that's the most important thing, and we'll keep chasing that.
And finally, you'll probably understand that you're not being talked about as much as some of the other 10 teams as a major playoff contender because of the fixture list. But Connacht have jumped to 6 now. They're in, as you say, it's in your own hands, but away to Munster, away to Leinster, their fixtures, either side of the Stormers game, their fixtures that traditionally Connacht don't have a hugely successful record in. Do you appreciate that? Do you appreciate that that's putting a little bit of extra pressure on you to hold into this top 8 position?
Yeah, I'm certainly aware of that. But I've actually feel a little bit like it's taking the pressure off us. I do feel like we're a bit under the radar. I think it's really important that that we're attacking these last 3 games from that 6th position, as you said. Definitely records, away to Munster, away to Leinster. They're incredibly different places, incredibly difficult places to play and get a result, not only for us, but for a lot of teams. That said, Interpros are where we see our team come most alive. And I think in that sense, we'll certainly go there full of confidence and full of determination when the time comes. So I think everyone will be really excited about those. Stormers at home. Stormers obviously a terrific team. And, they've had a lot of success in the last couple of seasons, but it'll be the last home game at Dexcom Stadium before the Clan Terrace is demolished and the whole face of things changes for the next 12 months or so. So that'll be a huge occasion for the club and for the supporters and for the province as a whole. So, we won't be short of momentum in those last 3 games, and we'll take stock on the injuries and things here, but we'll make sure we've got a really good rugby plan for all 3. And emotionally, I've no doubt we'll be at the intensity required.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out or nothing changes. Sad